With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Russian missile and drone strikes overnight into Sunday killed at least one person in Ukraine, including a man in the Chernihiv region, and causing power and water outages in the industrial city of Kremenchuk, home to a major oil refinery. Ukraine says Russia aims to cripple its energy grid for a fourth winter. The renewed attacks coincided with the end of 3 days of U.S.-Ukrainian peace talks in Florida. President Zelensky said he received updates and vowed continued cooperation with Washington to reach a genuine peace. Outgoing U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg said negotiations are in the final stage, hinging on control of Donbass and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov praised the Trump administration's new national security strategy for emphasizing dialogue. Former Ukrainian Prime Minister Nikolai Azarov claimed the U.S. may remove President Volodymyr Zelensky if he obstructs Washington's efforts to resolve the Ukraine conflict. He argued that corruption probes into Zelensky's closest allies by Western-backed agencies indicate a plan to oust him. Several top officials, including the Justice and Energy Ministers and Chief of Staff Andrei Yermak, have already resigned over a €100 million graft scandal. Putin has said it is legally impossible to sign peace with Zelensky, asserting he lost legitimacy after canceling elections. Polling shows Zelensky's popularity is declining. Russia's SVR previously alleged U.S. and UK officials discussed replacing him. Amid growing alarm over mass immigration, Ireland has seen the launch of a women's coalition on immigration, led by barrister Louise de Bruyne, to press for protections for women and girls and full disclosure of migrant-related sexual offense data. A new report comparing crime statistics across 6 European nations claims foreign nationals are 3 to 4 times more represented in sexual crimes on average, with Afghan and Pakistani migrants up to 15 times more likely to be implicated in Italy. De Bruyne argues Irish authorities downplayed the link between migration and sexual violence, citing a recent case of a 10-year-old girl allegedly raped by a migrant housed by the state. The coalition demands transparent statistics so policy can be evidence-based rather than driven by political correctness. Elon Musk has called for abolishing the European Union and restoring national sovereignty after Brussels fined his social platform X €120 million for allegedly violating the Digital Services Act censorship rules. Musk argued the EU is undemocratic and suppresses free expression. U.S. officials echoed criticism, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling the fine an attack on American tech companies, and Deputy Secretary Christopher Landau accusing Europe of relying on U.S. defense while undermining U.S. interests through EU policies. The Trump administration warned Europe faces civilizational erasure due to globalist agendas including censorship, open borders, and supranational governance. French far-left MP Raphael Arnault, a leader of the Antifa-aligned Young Anti-Fascist Guard in Lyon, has a finalized conviction for aggravated assault linked to a 2021 group attack on a man they believe to be a right-wing activist. He received a 4-month suspended sentence and must pay €1,600 in damages after dropping his appeal, making the conviction definitive. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage calls Reform UK the positive party of change and hope.
Do you know why? The people of Scotland know it already. They know it already. And there is a huge gap in the political market. And do you know what people want? That one 4-letter word. No, not that one. It's one 4-letter word. Hope, 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 hope.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
There is a problem with medicine, and we can explain what it is by looking back to the discovery of penicillin. Penicillin, it turns out, was not just an accidental finding. Alexander Fleming discovered that mold he found in a culture dish was killing bacteria, but it took over 10 years before a team at Oxford University were able to isolate the active ingredient. They produced small quantities for preclinical and clinical trials, helping prove the compound was safe and could beat infection. However, they couldn't produce it at scale. In 1941, Andrew Jackson Moyer of the US Department of Agriculture, the forerunner to the FDA, suggested changes to the manufacturing process, enabling mass production. It turns out medicines are not invented when someone discovers a new molecular entity. They are the product of key stakeholders working together collaboratively. Until medicine can be manufactured at scale, it may as well not exist. And in 2025, this is a problem. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical companies began outsourcing production. Suddenly the system was significantly less integrated. Someone with a new discovery today will find themselves disconnected from the rest of the development and manufacturing process. Companies that develop medicine are still happy to work with big established pharma companies, but the modern day Flemings are cut out of the system. The result is far fewer new medicines coming to market. We want to fix this by ensuring the pharma industry builds a more integrated supply chain. We also believe that doctors' expertise administering medicine should be included at the beginning of the process. We know that doctors on the front line have insights about how to repurpose medicine. Doctors should be able to report their findings so that the necessary testing can be completed and they can share their results worldwide. Learn more here and help us take medicines back to the future.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
News Corp Australia is launching a new national campaign aimed at protecting young Australians from the dangers of social media. The Let Them Be Kids campaign is calling on the federal government to increase the age children can access social media platforms to 16. Child advocates and health professionals are supporting the push. Psychologists believe excessive social media usage is worsening the youth mental health crisis. Suicide and self-harm rates in people aged under 19 have increased since children began using social media. Experts claim it's also responsible for an increase in eating disorders, loneliness, sleep deprivation, as well as a reduction in social skills.
And a good afternoon or a good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to The World Today, and this is the big issue. Saving the children. Is it a Trojan horse for social media internet control? We'll find out at the panel. I think it is, by the way. I think it really is. Two of the most significant changes ever made to the way Australians use the internet come into effect next month. It's this month. But most people will have only heard of them once. That's the one on December 10. Less than 3 weeks after the social media ban comes into effect, the next bit is that search engines such as Google and Microsoft's Bing will be given up to 6 months to find out how old their users are before deciding what to show in search results. A group of codes developed by the tech giants themselves but policed by the E-Safety Commissioner, are trying to stop children from seeing pornography, high-impact violence, self-harm and suicidal content. This, by the way, will hinder all Australians. So all of us will soon be forced to verify ourselves to do an internet search. Smile at the camera. This sounds akin to treating everybody seeking online information as a suspect. You are guilty until proven innocent. It is not about child safety at all. Electronic Frontiers Australia John Pane told a government inquiry an incremental measure of safety must not be purchased at the cost of the fundamental privacy, anonymity and freedom of expression for an entire generation. The Australian chairman of Online Free Speech said The proposed regulatory approach exchanges one set of risk unsuitable content for another, far greater systemic risk, the potential mass collection of children's and adults' identity data, further enriching the data stores and financial positions of big tech and big data, and increasing cyber risk on a very significant scale. Our panel today will discuss all this and we'll find out what really is playing out, what it really is all about. Personally, I believe it is not about child safety. Already they have worked out what to do to get around these. So much for the adults. Maybe they should have had a few kids on the board to work out where goes what and how to do this and that. My guests are Tony Nicolette, criminologist and advocate for human rights, Dr. Michael J. Sutton, CEO of Freedom Matters today. Gentlemen, tell me your views. The D-Day, well, it's like the alphabet. We have D-Day, then we'll have F-Day and E-Day all the way through. And they're saying up until about the end of March, maybe start of April, around about Easter. Wonder why they would do that. Tony, what's your views? What's your first, as an overview, what's your thoughts about this e-safety thingo that's looming, that we're going to have to, one, use biometrics and some sort of ID. They're going to, they say they are going to make sure that the data is gone as soon as you've logged in, but they're going to shop that out to a third party, so that's not going to go anywhere. It's a bit like TikTok under Alice's control, which is Oracle, saying that we're going to make sure that the data doesn't go anywhere. He's going to send it off to Israel. What's your thoughts about this, Tony?
Well, firstly, Mike, and thanks for having me on. Firstly, children's safety, I think, is a paramount concern, not just for every adult, but I think it's a universal concern. It's one thing that we enshrine in many international instruments, Family Law Act, the paramountcy principle of making sure children are safe. I just think that in this instance, what they're doing is they're playing on words to use children as, if we could call it, the Trojan horse to get certain laws through. And those certain laws, in my view anyway, look at implementing bypasses to very important principles such as privacy and how that privacy is going to be managed, number one. One of the very key facets of many open democratic societies in the world, I can't see right now any logical conclusion as to how making everyone else verify who they are and tracking every little piece of information on the internet is going to make children any safer. Then we also have the other issue you just mentioned there, which was the third-party verification. Well, this creates high risk. We're on-selling information about people's biosecurity, that biosecurity being, your iris, your facial. These are things, unlike the old days, if you'd lost your key card, so your bank card, you could change the PIN number, you could change the password. You can't change your iris, you can't change facial figures for many years. So I guess as you age, that may change slightly. We also have these issues whereby the farming out of that information is gravely concerning. I'm very surprised that civil liberties organisations haven't jumped up, but then again, they haven't done much in the sense of actually protecting civil liberties in some areas. Obviously, they're very good in other areas, but in these sorts of areas, they seem to play along to the tune of government imposing further and further bans on your security because it's going to keep you safe. And as we've seen during the COVID period, the government was very good at saying 2 weeks to flatten the curve, just 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. Well, here we've got a very similar Trojan horse. Let's just get this across, and then will implement further changes down the track. And we've seen that during COVID, whereby they said 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and Australia experienced some of the harshest lockdowns the world has ever seen. And we're going to see that here again. So what they actually did here in Australia, they actually got those measures and they on-sold them onto the private organisations. And we had massive private companies all around the world, because I just came back from the USA, and all around the world they were implementing these mandates, and you had to do that to survive. So essentially the government lost its ability to govern, or gave it away, knowingly and willingly, and in that, a lot of corporations were getting incentivised by virtue of, I will supplement, wages, will supplement while workers are off. So those mandates were really entrenched by the private sector, and that private sector was really doing the heavy lifting of the government work in circumstances where constitutional challenges, although here in Australia our constitution didn't really protect people with respect to a lot of what was happening then. I can't see how it's going to happen here. I certainly do hope it does, and I certainly hope that privacy, liberty and freedoms are actually something that come back on the radar here in Australia, because that Trojan horse, once it's gone, it's just going to unleash such tracking and a surveillance society to the extent that we'll never experience freedom again.
Yeah, I know. Before we get into Michael, I just want to make a point that they had an interview with the Shadow Minister of Communications, which is the Liberal National Party rep, and the Shadow Minister said, and by the way, they're protecting our freedom. She said that she agrees with the government and that government must always control the internet, which is the town square. Dr. Michael J. Sutton, can you just give us your thoughts, just a brief overview on what we're seeing at the moment, please?
Oh, thank you very much, Mike. It's great to be invited on, and hi to Tony. We haven't met before. It's great to be on with you as well. I agree with a lot of what you've said. Keeping children safe is one of the most fundamental goals of a society, whether it's democratic or not. Children are the future, and ensuring that children have a healthy, happy, safe life is one of the paramount concerns, not only of parents, but of all communities, because children do need to be children, and they need a time when they are children, when they're protected from the various forces of evil in the world. And our society, we have to take account of the fact that the reality is, even before the internet and before social media, that our society has failed on many levels to protect children. If you think about contemporary issues such as the continued fallout of the Epstein scandal in the United States, the institutional child abuse scandals in Australia and Europe and America, the domestic violence victims, the victims of kids at school, and also the normal things that we face in life, the growing up, there's the adolescent period, there's the feelings of loneliness and peer pressure. These are all the challenges that have been there for children and for the parents and guardians raising them since time immemorial. Then you have questions of faith and religion, questions of belief, and so on. And my take on this is slightly different, I suppose, from you, Mike. I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's only the first step, and it's very brave of the Albanese government to, I guess, make such a step into a world that is so rapidly changing. And I don't think that the governments really understand how fast the internet is moving and how fast things are moving in terms of algorithm, in terms of artificial intelligence. So in a sense, governments have a policy, they propose it, and in a way, the internet has already moved on beyond what governments have ever tried to do. I think it's a step in the right direction, in my view, but it's only a first step. And one of the benefits of this is, of course, because it's a pioneering step of the Albanese government, it hopefully will start a debate on what we do need to do and how we can interact with the systems of governance and how they relate to the systems of information technology. Because up to this point, we really haven't had a debate about this. And maybe one of the benefits of this new policy is that it actually begins a proper debate in society over the role of social media and what governments can and can't do. I mean, I don't believe this is we live in a democratic society. We don't live in an authoritarian state. Laws change all the time. They continually evolve. And so who knows what will happen when the next election comes along. Maybe there's a new government. Maybe there'll be new laws. At the end of the day, one of the benefits of this issue is that it is, in a sense, I mean, I'm not going to make any allegations of who's behind it or whatever. I think I've had my fill of conspiracy theories with COVID. That's enough for one lifetime. I don't, and with what's happening in the United States, it's sort of I reach a point. I just don't want to go down those rabbit holes. But I do think that there are many people in the government who really they're struggling, like we all are, with the power of the media and the power of social media and how addictive it is for children and how pernicious it can be and how subtle the power is. For example, give an example. AI is incredibly powerful, and the power of the artificial intelligence devices that are there, not only to, I guess, help you and assist you, but also interact with you, is something that we're not really considering. And so it's important for government to be involved in this, and it's important for questions to be asked, because that's what the nature of a democratic society is.
Okay, I disagree probably with just about everything you said, but that's just me, and that's why we're having this discussion.
But that's the bonus of what was just said. It's the battle of ideas, and I think that's sorry, Mike. I agree. I didn't agree with everything, and I'm sure there was no agreement with everything we said. But I think that the crux of what I heard there was the debate.
But isn't it a bit late, though, to have a debate when the law...
Thank you. That was going to be my point too, Mike. The debate comes usually before the laws come in, where Parliament, as enshrined by the people for the people, is supposed to debate these efficiently and effectively. And what we've been constantly seeing, and this is what we've been seeing here in Australia now, whether it was through COVID or whether it was through any other period, and we've seen, the mis and disinformation laws. I did submissions in these. They were guillotining them with 24 hours public consultation. Now, that's not a consultation. That's a ramrodding of a legislation going through without any consultation and not giving anyone, especially the public, of which the Parliament represents under the Westminster system. That is incontrovertible. I cannot see how an active, able debate with the citizens can occur if we get these guillotining orders, because the first tranche of the misinformation, disinformation, when it went to public consultation, went down dismally. It was like 120 to 0. It was absolutely dismal. Then what did they do? They learned their lesson and they said, let's ramrod this through. And so what we've actually seen here, I talk to people, and again, just let me re-emphasise, children's safety is absolutely paramount. I don't want that to be mistaken anywhere. It is. It is also incontrovertible in my eyes, okay, that a parent should be the parent and the government should not be a parent, okay? This is a fundamental principle. Now, the government can, in my view, and does, there's many laws out there that can protect this and understand how this works. A parent can introduce filters, can be a parent. As we heard, you still, these things have been around for time immemorial. They've been, the fruit from the poisonous tree, and it was up to the parent to say, hey, don't go here, don't do that. And, a lot of us grew up in those eras, and for the most part, it's been quite good. But the essence of where we are right now is the part about the debate. We're not having these debates, and we're not having the debates because government has become so, and I say we're really starting to get really close to that authoritarian system, which
we are there. I'm sorry, I disagree. We are there. And if you have the purveyors of our moral direction, such as Anita, she she's been proven to be a liar and rorting the government, rorting Australian people. So already the ones that's going to walk around with a hole in their hands, and that's what they're doing. And I don't mean to be cruel, but I can say that they beware of hypocrites. There you are. There's something, and that's what they are. These people, they do not. It is not about kids. Already, it's failed. It has failed already because children who want it. Tony, and I don't know about you, Michael, but Tony, when you grew up, I went to a Catholic school. I had a father who was a policeman in a small town. And if we wanted to get a beer at 15, let me tell you, that most children in the bush did have a beer when they were 15. Now, when you have a father as a copper, you're in trouble. But I did that, and you can get that because you ask a friend to get it for you. When you wanted to see what was in Penthouse, oh, Bob Guccione, you're a terrible person, there were copies floating around, and that was at a Catholic school. So already the children have worked out, or the teenagers, and by the way, I'm not saying we should be looking after children. This has got nothing to do with kids. This has got everything to do with, because if you look at Part B in the 27th of December, you have to have some sort of biometrics to log in to go to a search engine. I'm sorry, that's the worst bit. So what you do is you cover it over. You say, we're going to save children. We're going to save society. We're going to save the planet. And it is absolute, it's a lie. It's an absolute pure abomination of the truth. And for people to say this is about saving children, I have to say it's not. Let me give you a point here. Anybody, forget about what we do, to someone who has a business on YouTube that relies on people to go to watch that particular video, they're not going to, if they're an adult, they are not going to have to log in all the time and give facial recognition and stuff like that. They're going to get tired of it, or they're just not going to do it. Forget the data being kept and used for later. They're not going to do any of that because they can't be bothered. So what they've done is by attacking and by the way, I think YouTube's awful, but they are there for those that want to put out their car videos, they want to put out their travel videos. You have to check in now. You've got to smile at the camera. You got to have your proof that you are who you are, and that is wrong. That is entirely wrong. It is to collect the data, and that's what it's all about. And if you don't believe me, go back to COVID and tell me anyone. We both all on the same page here, Tony and Michael. Who's been held accountable? No one. They have gotten away with it, and they're going to get away with it.
But
now.
I think I think Mr. Sutton, Michael Sutton, or Mr. Sutton, Michael, whatever. Michael, I think his point is correct. Michael's point is correct, Mike, in this, because there's two Mikes. I'll call one Mike, one Michael. And I think it's correct to the extent that I think it's that engagement that we really need. I think Mike's on the point, but the point we're making here is the lack of engagement and the ramrodding. And I think in that sense, I think that's a really good idea, but we've forgotten how to do that in Australian Parliament because we're just passing laws saying this is good for you. I don't know, Mike. Mike?
Yeah, before that, I totally agree there, but I don't agree because what they're doing, if it was a honourable bill to look after the children, it's not. It's failed already. So if it's failed already, we either have the Three Stooges, which some say we have, Imran Grant, Albanese, and what's her name, Anita Wells. They're the Three Stooges. Either they're incredibly stupid because it has failed already, or has it? Is it doing exactly what they want? And I believe it is doing exactly what they want. The children are not part of this equation. Some might think it is. I think you're living in a world of make-believe if you think it is.
Well, can I say something, Mike? I think that what you've articulated is a kind of a typical right-wing.
No, it's not right-wing. That's
no. I just heard something. No. What? Let me finish. You're articulating a view that's not from the left. Can I just make my point? Let's make my point. What we have since we've had COVID, we have governments. We have no choice in our political system.
Yes.
For people to vote, there's no choice. And the first issue that divided Australia, the only one that divided Australia since the COVID period, was the war in Gaza. That was the first time there was this big split, and we need more big split. Now we have with the emissions, with climate change, another split. And so for the first time in maybe 10 years, it's getting to the point where there needs to be more issues where there are choices for people to make. And that's a healthy thing. That's what we call a democracy, where when you go to an election, you have a choice. The disturbing thing that you said at the beginning of your talk was that the Liberal Party's view is that it's exactly the government's view. And that is sort of, well, what's the choice for the Australian people? Do we have a choice? And we need to have two political parties that actually believe in different things. Otherwise, why do we have a democracy? Now, if you're in the Labor Party with Albanese, he's left-wing, so he believes in regulation. He loves regulation. And that's what it's about. The more laws, the better. The more regulations, the better. And so he's trying to protect children from his perspective, which is the way to do everything is, have another legal system, another legal structure. That's always been the left's view. And on the right, it's about freedom. It's about freedom of choice.
No, it's not. Not anymore, Mike. I'm sorry. It's not anymore. I mean, you look at the show.
I mean, he's talking in principle, I think.
I'm talking in principle. I'm talking in principle. The problem is, if there is no choice, and if people have already disillusioned with government, they're already disillusioned with democracy en masse. And so if it reaches a point where they just realise it doesn't make any difference who you vote for, and this actually becomes a continual tradition, our entire system will collapse.
Yes.
It will collapse because there's no point in voting if the party that that used to stand for freedom doesn't believe in freedom. And so that's really, why these debates are vitally important. And we need leaders who really disagree.
Yeah, Michael, I think we're actually starting to see that with the emergence of the minor parties, Mike Ryan and Michael Sutton. We're actually starting to see that. Like you look at Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, agree or disagree, they're providing exactly what Michael Sutton is saying, is that alternative structure to which isn't being addressed anywhere else. And what is it what's happening out there? Well, people want to be heard. They're not being heard by their representatives. If they're not being heard by their representatives, well, that debate's not going to get into Parliament. If that debate doesn't get into Parliament, or it's kiboshed or closed down by virtue of guillotine orders that are legitimately in the Senate that I believe shouldn't, but anyway, they're there. And look, sometimes they're there for a reason, and that is for national security. Let's say we're about to be bombed off the shore and we don't have a law. Well, yeah, let's guillotine an order through to save that. Or there's a public emergency and it needs to be, something. Yes, these are reasonable issues that the Australian public, and I think any public around the world, would want to see. But right now we don't have that alternative.
Okay. Let me just make a point here. I'll ask both of you, just answer, one word answer. Who cooked up this? Tell me who cooked it up?
Doesn't matter.
No, it does matter. Who cooked it up? I'll tell you who cooked it up. News Corp and Journo. That's it. They cooked it up. Good idea. Murdoch Media. I'm sorry. I'd rather deal with Damel if he could come back in Stalin than deal with them. There's not much difference anyway.
Well, there's a profound difference. Mike, there's a profound difference between Rupert Murdoch and Leonard.
The point I'm making here is that you're talking about a democratic society. We are not in a democracy anymore. We are not. If you go to vote for, and Tony made a very good point about Pauline Hanson's One Nation, or One Nation now, but truly, they're never going to be in government. They can just make it maybe a difference if it's close. I can tell you now, if you look at what's happening with the divisions within the LNP, with such as Barnaby Joyce moving out, you have a group in Brisbane who are putting a wedge in the middle of the Conservatives because they say they're not doing enough, and the others saying they're doing too much. It all goes like this. So you're not going to have a change of government. You're not going to have that change of government. Why is it, I'm going off track here, but why is it that the Labor governments, such as in the UK and Australia, have such little regard for our basic rights. And if you go on about e-safety and porn, why hasn't the e-safety commissioner or the government done something about that years ago?
Mr. Sutton, you can go, mate.
Well, News Corp is a far cry from Lenin and Stalin. I think Lenin was asked.
Yes, but they have as much regard for democracy or freedom of choice as each other.
But the reality is that we do live in a democracy, absolutely, but we do live in well, for want of a better word, a market-based capitalist system. And behind the political system must be the consensus of the major corporate entities. Otherwise, the political system won't survive. And so there has to be a society which recognises, I guess, the reality of these big corporations, and that's why they exert powerful influence in our society, not just at the moment, but they have always exerted powerful influence. So if you take the Hawke Keating governments, there was a powerful influence coming from the mining lobby and from the exporters who were opposed to the tariff policies that were underpinned our post-war industrialization. So it was not really a battle of ideas. It was to one degree, but behind that, it was powerful corporate interests who were pushing for trade liberalization, and that is what created our free market system. And then we had the global mining boom, which has kept our prosperity artificially inflated because of China. And that also was driven by basic material interests. So there's always been a close relationship between the corporate interests. And I guess the irony of News Corp's proposal of keep the children safe is, why haven't the governments and political parties and the churches come out with similar policies, keep the children safe? Why does a newspaper man have to do it when these are things that everyone on this panel, we all believe in fundamentally, the rights and to protect children? Why does a media magnate have to promote it? Why can't the political parties and the others, institutions in society come?
Tony, tell me this. And I'll go back to this. So a News Corp editor and a journo over a lovely dinner at the Lodge, they decided that with the PM, I would imagine, or someone in there, but probably the PM, that they decided that this is such a good idea. This is not how policy should be done, not over a couple of red wines and in the Lodge with a journo from an organisation that distorts the truth, that has influence on on elections, and they do. They are not for democracy. But I do not understand how this could happen, that you have a journo and an editor having a boozy dinner and they come up with this thing. There has been no debate with anybody, except they ram it through. We're going to save children. They could have done that years ago, and they haven't. And as for the churches, I look at the Vatican at the moment. I mean, I actually, because I'm a Catholic, and I thought, well, hang on, even though my dad did prosecute the Catholic Church, I thought, hang on, they're going to get more about religion. No, they're sticking the beak into everything these days. Again, back to the woke stuff. Yet they're not going to stand up for those that are downtrodden. They're going to stand up for those that think, well, this is going to save the planet, or this is going to save the children. This in no way protects children. It's failed already. They know how to get around it. It's a waste of time for e-safety for children. It's doing exactly what government wants. They want the data.
But Mike, there are so many decisions. If you look at the history of Australia and the history of the important decisions that Australian governments have made, many of them have actually occurred over a dinner table. And some politician or some bureaucrat or whatever comes up with an idea and they put it on the envelope or the tissue paper, they push it across the table, and then these ideas formed. If you look at the formation of APEC, for example, it was decided by Bob Hawke on a plane trip to Korea. It wasn't even in his speech. He makes the speech and he doesn't even include America. And then we still have APEC today. They met in Korea. I mean, you can debate about the effectiveness of APEC. But this was an idea that popped into his head just as he was flying from Australia to Korea. And that has reshaped Australia's foreign policy for the last 30 years. So the issue for democratic societies is it doesn't really matter where ideas come from, but they do need to be confirmed by the electoral process. They do need to go through the democratic process, and people will make their decision on this policy, along with others, by the next election. But the key thing, as both of you said, is that there needs to be a choice. Parties have to give us a choice. But also,
Mike, voted for this?
But Mike, can I just say something else? If you remember, there was a time when there was no Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party was just as One Nation is today. But then there was no Liberal Party, and then it was created, and it resonated with the times in the 50s under Menzies. But that's how.
Tony.
Yeah, look, to an extent, there's a few things here. One is, if we, I look at it like a marriage, right? At some point, okay, we're talking about napkins or whatever it is. These days it's phones. You pass your phone over or your napkin, say, here, my name's Mike or my name's Tony, here's my phone number. And now that potentially could have lasted in a very long-term relationship, and there was really good communication. They consulted each other on choices. Children came into the family. They consulted each other about, where's the best school, what's happening. Again, that's the metaphor I'm using here. And with good communication, a family can thrive. We're using this idea of putting people on the back burner. Now, there is this idea of democracy, but I want to add one important aspect of that. A democracy only works when you participate. And so I use the term participatory democracy, and that is the important distinction that we need to talk about here, because when we have the Senate and the House of Reps ramrodding legislations through, well, we have the idea of participatory democracy. Yes, people did vote, and let's have a look at the vote here in Australia. I think the primary votes were some of the lowest we've ever seen. It was only by virtue of the allocation of preferences that there was this perceived landslide. It wasn't. There was no landslide. It was really the Australian people were saying, I don't like any of you, which is what we're all alluding to right now. We don't like any of you, but there's no other alternative. The other point, as I indicated, was the participatory side. And the participatory side is this, is that people are being nullified. They're being shut down. The actual people who introduce the laws, make the laws, and then interpret the laws are forever engaging in this. And I'm not talking about a conspiracy, because when they're all lined up, they can only lead to one thing, and that is reinforce each other's decisions. And that is the state of play here in Australia that is much more grim and much more stark than anyone is talking about right now, because what we need to do is have a look at how these processes are working. We have these very important principles here in Australia, such as the separation of powers and all these things. But where there's no participatory democracy, you can have a democracy that is authoritarian. And that is what we're seeing. We're seeing a surveillance society. We're seeing one that is being built. And we're seeing, if I could use the other metaphor, which was we're building a house, we're laying the pipes for which those pipes will go in the walls and the ceiling and the floor, but we're just laying the mains right now. That is the concern. And when we shut the people out, which is exactly what's happening, and I'll go back to my family metaphor, and I do a lot of practice in family law and violence and criminology and all that stuff, is we then start with, and I'm not going to use any sex or biological gender or anything like that, we start putting someone in the dark. Now, when people aren't heard, they start to rise. And this is exactly where I think Michael Sutton was going here, which in the sense that when we're not participating, people will rise. And that option of a yes or a no, which was a very good cleavage point in Australia, I thought that a yes and no vote was a very clear distinction of a participatory democracy coming out and working. And then we had the usurpation of that Democratic in Victoria recently, where they still passed it again, despite the fact that they voted no.
And
Okay,
something in South Australia.
they need to be ramrodded through the High Court or do something, because that was so wrong what they did there. They effectively lifted the middle finger up to the Australian electorate. Okay,
Can you?
that there is not a participatory democracy. Rather, it was an authoritarian step. And this is where the Victorians, exactly what we're saying here, is you need to stand up, you need to make your voice heard. But if that's not being allowed, and there are laws being passed, and we don't have, that judicial discretion because it's forever being narrowed, then obviously we've got these issues where they need to interpret a law that they're given, and that's their duty. Okay, so we can't call them, anything, because they're given this rule book that they need to play by, and us lawyers work in that rule book as well, and that's why we can only work with what we have. But you deny the participatory democracy, you make up your own rules, and you play the game how you want it played. That was never fair, and I remember when you played Bull Rush here in Australia, and that was a game we used to play, and I'm sure maybe you'd get sued if the kids were doing that because it was unsafe. But we're all here today, and we're all better for it.
Okay, I want to ask you though, now both of you, how will this save children? Because at the moment, from all reports and people that we know, it will make no difference. They've worked a way around it. So if they've worked a way around it, how will it save children? Surely to Michael and to you, Tony, surely the government isn't that stupid. Or what I said before about the Three Stooges, in Anika Wells, Albanese, and Julie Inman Grant. Surely they have another agenda, because they would have known it's not going to work. So how does this e-safety bill, if it's already out there that it's not going to work, how does it save children?
Michael Sutton.
Yeah, well, I disagree that it's.
No, but it's out there. Everyone knows how to get around it.
Some of them do, but you have to realise that children are not independent beings. Children are children; they're not adults, and they're the responsibility of their parents. They're the responsibility of their parents until they become adults. Children are not adults. I'm sorry, and they may spin it, and an 8-year-old might say, "I'm an adult. I know how to surf the net." Well, so what? So can everyone else. But at the end of the day, children are the responsibility of their parents. Raising children is very difficult today. There's the high cost of living. It's very difficult. And for a lot of working parents, particularly working class parents, the internet is sort of a safe option for them because they're so busy. They come home, their children, they don't live in a nice area. Like there's a lot of parts of Australia where people live are not very nice. They're not very safe. You can't have your kids out wandering the streets as they do here in our suburbs here. There are little gangs of kids riding their e-bikes around the street. But there are a lot of parts of Sydney where there's no way you would allow your kids to wander around. So the reality is, and then the internet comes along and you just give the kid the phone, and then they can look at the phone for the next 6 hours. It's cheap entertainment. But is that the right way to raise kids? And I don't think it is. But it's not the parents' fault, and it's not the kids' fault. It's just the nature of our society that it's become so incredibly busy and so difficult for parents to raise kids. And into this mess, and it is a maelstrom. I think it's like a hurricane. And they have this maelstrom, this hurricane. If you've ever been in an earthquake, I've been in lots of earthquakes, you don't know what you're doing. It's just beyond belief. And along come these laws, and they're not perfect laws. But I think in a sense, they're like that game of quoits. You've got the stick out there, you're throwing the quoit out, and you're trying to go in a direction. And I think it is the first step, but I don't think it's a perfect step. I guess I do agree with you, Mike. The problem is the surveillance state, and I would say that it's too late. We already have a surveillance state.
No, you're dead right. It is too late. But
it's too late. And the government, all the algorithms. I wrote a poem. I went to a poetry workshop, and in Japan, and I wrote a poem with AI, and AI was suggesting to me the next step, and it was so disturbing It was such a basic thing I was doing. It said I wanted to go down the post-apocalyptic route, and it was suggesting to me, would you like to go darker? What do you mean dark? I said, okay, sure. And they came up with another one. Then they said, would you like to go even darker than that? I thought, what? You talking to me? I said, yes. And then when they presented this horrible vision of the world, AI said to me, would you like a little bit of hope? I thought, what? Sure. And then so they presented a nice little image of the perfect society. I don't think people understand the power of social media and algorithms.
They do.
And
That's
over-
but so
and- and governments
it's our town square. It's our town square. What they've
Absolutely.
done, our government has, because we are now all going to be surveilled. The data will be kept. Oh, we'll look after your private information. We're going to farm it out to a third party. So therefore,
it's already out there. It's already happening.
No, but this is, if you want to, and Tony will verify this, if you want to work out the algorithms of a particular person, what he does, where he goes, this is a magnificent, not start, because you are right, it's out there already, but this sort of is the glue, it brings it all together. But the question was, and I'm going to go to Tony here, because at the moment, you haven't convinced me, how is this going to save the kids, Tony, if already they've worked out how to get around it? And it's like what I said when I was a kid, if I wanted to get a beer, and I had a copper as a father in a small town, but if I wanted to get a beer, I knew how to do it. And in those days, when they had horses just about, it was a very bad thing to be a Catholic, son of a copper, and having a beer at 15. But it was easy. So let's move forward to now. The kids know exactly how to get around this. And you, Michael, said something quite correct. It's always evolving quicker and quicker. So surely the government, with these three stooges in control, surely they would have been told that before you even bring the law out, they're going to work a hack around that, Tony. How's it going to save the kids?
Already they're hacking around, and I'll raise a few points. VPNs or
But they're going to ban those because we've got to make sure. But they can still get around it.
No,
and you and I and Michael are ones who are being surveilled.
Well, that's my point. So, you have these, whether you've got VPN, something else will come up, and then you'll find an alternative communication network which hasn't been regulated. The point I'm trying to make here is this, and Mel Durkheim in sociology, and I remember when I was studying criminology way back when, the people are very adaptable to change. And if you make change that they don't like, they'll find a way around it. And I'll give you a couple of classic examples. And as you know, I work in family and criminal law. In criminal law, criminals are very adaptive. They see a law and they'll get around it. They find something, they'll get around it. We always said that jail was not necessarily only a penitentiary where people go and become rehabilitated, but it's also the University of Crime where they learn, gee, this is where I screwed up, then they'll find someone else and they'll learn how to get it. A classic example would be, say, a restraining order. Well, a restraining order, obviously they are to be complied with, but I was in court today and all I heard was restraining order breach, contravention. So you're always looking at these, and then some aren't contraventions in the sense of a contravention where someone could be sending their child a Christmas card saying, I love you and I miss you. Is that technically a contravention, but in the larger scheme of things, is it a fearful one where someone's life's in danger? And that's what we're seeing here. I really can't see the material benefit for any child, having these bans. Secondly, the other side, we spoke about participatory governance and democracy. We're eroding and the responsibility of the parent. Now, Michael Sutton was talking about what it is to be a parent. Well, what is it to be a parent? Well, we grew up in a society where, if you weren't home when the lights came home, like that was, gee, I was more afraid of mum than a police car chasing me down the road. Let me tell you, I'll tell you right now, if, I'd start crying before. If I see the lights come on and I wasn't home, I'd start crying while I was writing because I knew what was on the other end. But the point is this, we're taking that away, and we're in this increasingly busy society where parenting has been eroded. And what happens when parenting is eroded? Well, the state and its institutions start taking care of parenting. That's not the only issue, but because that's a very granular level, isn't it? See, what we've also been seeing is that salami slicing. Okay, so this is just one aspect, the social media ban. We've also got the other issues when it comes down to, the identification of children and their gender in society. And so that's another one where parents, if they question, their teachers and that at school, well, obviously those children are being flagged and their parents are being flagged for the way they parent. So let's not look at this in isolation of a social media. We're talking of a complete package, okay, that is leading to a surveillance society. And as Michel Foucault once spoke in the Panopticon, it's where we have this internal structure where everyone is being surveilled at every second of the day. So let's not look at this from a granular level. It is very concerning. It is not going to stop it, just like a restraining order doesn't stop someone walking into someone's house and committing an atrocious act of violence. It does not stop it, and it will not stop it, because people are geniuses. And Emile Durkheim said, you give them the opportunity and they will find another way around it. It is not going to stop it.
So therefore, we do agree that Michael might say not everybody, but there are some. Tony and I are more or less on the same page here, because they are going to find a way around it, if not already, which he says they have. I have to again go back to this, and sorry for being a broken record, but where's this going to save the kids? But where's this going to save the kids? Why? And you mentioned something before, Michael, as we've got 4 minutes left, but if you can do this fairly quickly. What about the parents? What about the parents being parents? And if they say, oh, it's too hard for me, well, you do what a parent does, take an interest in your child. Have we lost our moral compass? Because I think we have, and I think this is the reason why we have these draconian laws that aren't going to do any good for what they've been. People save the children, it's not going to save any kids.
Can I just say one point on that? Sorry, Michael Sutton, I apologize. I'll only be 30 seconds on this. I do a number of cases where the parent's role has been usurped by virtue of a child engaging in institutions. So the parent is being usurped by virtue of all these things. And this is just another layer of that. I just want to put that, sorry, Michael.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think the nature of our society is such that the pressures on parents are incredible. The problems in our society, and I think there's as you say, we do live in a surveillance society. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the choices that parents make. And if you are a parent, you are committing your life to raising your child. And you will do everything you can, if you love your child, to give them the best life that they can have. And I think most parents are really desperately trying to do that. Most parents love their children. There are a lot of who don't, I suppose. But they're trying the best they can. Whatever help they can get, that's also a good thing. And it's the role of government to enable parents to help their children to be happy, productive, safe individuals, to develop their own self-esteem, their own sense of independence, their own creativity. But being part of a family that's what it is. It's not an autonomous existence. It's parents and children living together, growing together, and developing those relationships. And unfortunately, with the internet, it does provide a world that's not real. It's not real. It's fake. It's the greatest fake news, the internet. And
no, so it's not. It is not. That's a ridiculous thing. It's like saying free-to-air TV is fake, which probably is more than the internet. Years ago, it was. It's not anymore. You have news stations, lifestyle stations. You got the whole plethora. So
I'm not talking about you, Mike. I'm not talking about news organizations.
You can't just put everybody in one basket.
No, I'm definitely not talking about you at all. No, but I'm saying that the fakeness of the virtual world, and you have the social influencers, the ones who are trying to influence children, the ones who are trying to sexualize children, the predators that are out there. It's a minefield out there, really.
Well, what it
And,
is, if I could just interject on that basis there too, if I may, just very, very briefly, is that it's not just the social influences, because when I look around society and I walk into a child's library and I see a book on some very hardcore sexual stuff that we were talking about penthouses earlier. You didn't read about that in penthouses, but you're getting it in a primary school about, very, very ghastly things. And we're seeing, grown men in G-strings dancing in schoolyards. Well, my mum would have come up there, and God rest her soul, where she's at, a very, very, very passionate Catholic woman, and she would have went absolutely bonkers at the principle. And I think they're the values we've lost in this society. It is, and I agree with Mike, because there is a very, very dark world out there on the internet. And as you know, Mike, I used to work in those intelligence areas many, many, many years ago. But there is a darker world out there, and there is also that fictitious one that is also being this pretentious idea. But the crux of the issue is this: misinformation cannot only extend to the private sector. We're seeing that almost on a daily basis, and one of the key aspects of intelligence is misinformation. Okay,
we're going to stop.
That is one of the biggest tools of intelligence. Okay, we see that in propaganda, and we see that we cannot allow things such as this occur in the absence or in a vacuum, and therefore that essence of where we came and where you started, Michael Sutton and Mike, is participatory democracy, not just a democracy, but a participatory one that has real choices and real solutions and real debate.
Yeah, we have to stop. Sorry about this, gone way over time, because now we have another show coming up. We have to try and be professional. I have to anyway. But I do agree, and I think we should revisit this very shortly, maybe after December 10, to see what's happening. Maybe continue this discussion, because I think it's a massive failure. It's a failure on what they're telling people, but I think it's exactly what they want. And this is the surveillance state, as you mentioned, Michael and Tony. It's more than that. The control that they will have over the village square or the town square is an abomination. And free speech and information, you mentioned misinformation, Tony, who decides whether that's bad for you? It's subjective, because a person says that is not good for you. That's telling a lie. That's telling the truth. And if you don't believe me, look what happened at COVID. There was an abuse of human mankind that we've never, ever seen before. Gentlemen, I have to go. Tony Nicoli, advocate for human rights, and Dr. Michael J. Sutton, enjoy that very much. Thank you, Michael. CEO of Freedom Matters Today. This is The World Today.